28 years of marriage gone. Just like that, I told my friend Alex over coffee. I needed to tell someone what happened, and he'd always been there for me through thick and thin. I'm in my early 40s now, and looking back at how everything fell apart still feels surreal. My wife and I got together in the late 90s, married young at 22, and built what I thought was a perfect life with our 3 kids. Things started changing around 2017. I noticed my wife becoming distant, but I chalked it up to our middle child going through a rough patch with depression. As parents, we agreed to focus on helping our kid get better. I figured our marriage was strong enough to weather this temporary shift in priorities. The truth, as I would later discover, was far more complicated. It all started back in 2008 when social media was becoming popular. Everyone was connecting with old friends and acquaintances. I had over 1,000 connections myself. That's when my wife reconnected with her high school boyfriend. They dated when she was 17 and he was 22. Their relationship had ended badly. He disappeared without explanation, probably cheating on her. When they reconnected, they started meeting regularly at her mother's house while I was at work. At the time, my wife was finishing her degree, and I was supporting the family financially. We had 3 young children. I noticed she seemed withdrawn during this period, but I attributed it to stress. The financial crisis had hit, and I temporarily lost my job. Though I quickly found new employment thanks to my financial planning skills, the situation was tense. Little did I know what was really happening. Their relationship continued on and off over the years. They would lose touch, then reconnect. In 2017, he reached out claiming he was getting divorced, a lie, as I later found out from his wife. They started meeting several times a year. My wife would make up stories about weekend trips with friends. I never questioned it because I trusted her completely. I often took similar trips with my friend, so it seemed normal. Early 2021 was when everything exploded. My wife went on 3 trips in the first 3 months. On April 1st, yes, April Fool's Day, she came home and said she wanted a divorce. She gave me the classic speech about loving me, but not being in love with me anymore. She listed all my supposed faults and claimed she hadn't been happy for years. I was devastated. Within days, I started therapy, determined to fix whatever was wrong. I took full responsibility for our marriage problems, not knowing I was being manipulated. She said she needed space to think things through, and started going away every other weekend throughout spring. I offered to sign divorce papers multiple times, which she kept visible in her purse but never filed. She would give me just enough hope to keep me hanging on. By July, she said she wanted to give our marriage another chance, but she was still seeing him behind my back. That summer was brutal. I remember running an ultramarathon, hoping she would surprise me at the finish line. Instead, I came home exhausted to find her gone. Our kids took care of me that evening, getting groceries, cooking dinner, bringing ice packs. She returned late that night, having spent the day with him. Looking back now, I can't believe how blind I was to all the signs. Things came to a head in September 2021. After months of suspicion, I finally confronted her. She admitted to the affair, but only told me bits and pieces of the truth. When I asked her to choose between us, she said she wanted to stay with me. But she kept messaging him on Snapchat, claiming she needed time to end things properly. She convinced me she should meet him one last time to break it off in person. Like a fool, I agreed. They met halfway between our cities, but instead of ending things, they spent the afternoon together in his car. She finally sent him a breakup message in October, but by then something inside me had already died. We tried marriage counseling, 3 different counselors actually. The first one was useless because my wife hadn't admitted to the affair yet, so everyone, including me, blamed myself for our problems. The other 2 weren't much better, always trying to split the blame equally between us. Yes, I wasn't perfect. I worked long hours, spent time with friends, and didn't do my fair share of housework. Sometimes I got frustrated and raised my voice when I felt ignored, maybe 6 or 8 times in 2020. But I always communicated openly about my feelings and needs. My wife, on the other hand, never once told me there were problems. The situation with my family made everything worse. When I told them about the affair, my younger brother Tony, who I thought would support me, turned against me completely. He sent my wife emails claiming I was abusive and controlling, offering to help her leave me. The irony was rich. Tony had been the other man in his own relationship, ending up with a woman who cheated on her husband to be with him. My mother wasn't any better. During a car ride after visiting my injured father in the hospital, I opened up to her about my depression and having to get STD tests at my age. Her response, well, that's just what people do during affairs. It felt like being punched in the gut. Things got even more complicated when we took a trip to Europe in May 2022, trying to save our marriage. After a few drinks one night, my wife accidentally revealed she'd met him more times than she'd admitted. I booked a separate hotel room that night and told her I wanted a divorce. When we got home, she finally wrote out a complete timeline. Turns out she'd seen him 5 times in 2018 alone, marking the days with hearts in her planner like a teenager. By June, I was tired of her avoiding responsibility. The fold-out couch where they'd met at her mother's house, the same one our children had slept on during visits, was still there despite my request to get rid of it. She barely went to therapy, maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks. When her therapist announced a 2-month summer break, I realized she wasn't serious about fixing things. I was going through intensive trauma therapy myself, taking antidepressants and trying to process everything. But every time I brought up the affair, she got defensive or changed the subject. She just wanted to pretend it never happened and wait for me to get over it. Finally, I asked her to move out. After she moved out, things got even stranger with my family. My mother, who hadn't spoken to me in months, called my wife to offer support. She even called my wife's mother, something she'd never done before, to express her love and support for my wife. My father wasn't much better. When I tried talking to him about feeling betrayed by Tony, he just said, "You realize you're talking about my son, right?" Looking back now, the family dynamics make more sense. Tony had always been the troubled one, struggles with alcohol, couldn't keep a job, needed our parents to buy half his house so his family would have enough space. Meanwhile, I'd always been the stable one, good education, solid career, responsible. I guess he saw his chance to knock me down when I was finally vulnerable. Tony tried calling me in November after I gave him the finger when he drove past me walking my dog. He just yelled at me and laughed when I suggested he should apologize for betraying me. That was the last time we spoke. I sent my parents detailed letters explaining how hurt I was by their behavior. They never really responded, just showed up at my gym a few times, the same gym they'd always declined to visit when I invited them over the years. I just changed gyms. When I made a social media post about depression and offering support to others with similar struggles, my father suddenly called, first time in 9 months, wanting to have me committed to a mental facility. The same father who'd brushed off my mentions of depression throughout 2021 and 2022. When I pointed out this contradiction, he got offended and called my emotional letters nonsense. For anyone wondering if I really was abusive like my brother claimed, when my wife first asked for divorce, I immediately agreed. When I discovered the affair, I was more concerned about her safety, offering to change her car tires for winter before her next trip to see him. Some controlling monster I turned out to be, right? Now I'm starting fresh. I've resigned from my university position and accepted a job teaching in Southern Europe. My middle child is coming with me, my oldest is living with friends, and my youngest has an open invitation. I've told all my kids they're always welcome. I'll keep a spare bedroom ready and pay for their flights whenever they want to visit or stay. As for my wife, she finally started working on herself after moving out, but it was too late. I feel nothing for her now except a wish for her to be a good mother to our kids. She tried to reconcile for months after moving out, but I shut down any conversation unless it was about the kids. She seems to have accepted that now. I tried dating apps briefly, but realized I'm carrying too much baggage right now. I still struggle with depression and dark thoughts, though they're getting less frequent. Maybe something will happen naturally when I move. I've always gotten attention from Southern European women. Must be the tall, bearded, tattooed Viking look. Life goes on. I'm training for a marathon next month, aiming to finish under 4 hours. My personal best is 3:32, but I'll be happy with anything under 4 hours right now. Sometimes I think about how a 28-year marriage could end like this, but then I remember what I tell myself every morning. Today is the first day of whatever's next. The hardest part isn't losing her, it's losing my family. I haven't been to any family functions in over a year. No graduations, weddings, birthdays, nothing. Sometimes I hope my parents will apologize, but I've stopped caring about Tony. The first time he had a chance to support me, he chose to kick me while I was down. The kids know the basic story, but not the details. I didn't want to turn them against their mother, but I promised to answer any questions they have honestly. They're still processing it too. As for her affair partner and his ex-wife, I don't know or care what they're doing now. That chapter is closed. My wife was probably happy living her double life, escaping reality on weekends to act like a carefree teenager again. But that's not my problem anymore. I'm focused on building my new life, one day at a time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.